welcome to all in the gallery and online this evening on the 25th of September 2023 Council meeting. I open the meeting at 7 p.m. and I will now pass on to the Chief Executive Officer, Ms. Alison Beckwith, who will read out the formalities.
Thank you, Mayor. Welcome all to this ordinary meeting of Council. As the Mayor indicated, my name is Alison Beckwith and I'm the Chief Executive Officer here at Banyule Council. Tonight's meeting is being held in person in accordance with the provision of Council's governance rules and the Local Government Act 2020. The meeting is also being live streamed via Council's website and Facebook page. The live stream is not interactive. Any comments or private messages directed to us while the stream is live will not be presented to Council or have a bearing on the conduct of tonight's meeting. Council's request to speak methods continue to allow participation of our residents without having to attend the meeting in person. I'll just talk you through some participation guidelines. Please note that any public questions submitted to tonight's Council meeting will be read out by a member of our Executive Leadership team and a verbal response will also be provided. Questions and responses will also be included in the meeting minutes. Council does not accept questions as part of its request to speak process. No statement may be derogatory, defamatory or directed to an individual councillor, member of staff, ratepayer or member of the public. A 2-minute time limit does apply to those requesting to speak tonight. The timer will be used and a warning sound will sound at the 1.5 minute mark and officers will sum up for the last 30 seconds if required for statements being read out on behalf of residents. We ask that members of the gallery please check their phone and ensure that it's either switched off or on silent mode to avoid any disruptions. Members of the gallery leaving the meeting tonight, if you are actually leaving while the meeting is still in progress, we ask that you please not hold conversations with others until you're outside the building. Noise from the foyer area, both outside the chamber and downstairs, reverberates into this chamber and the live streaming. So I thank you in advance for that. I'll now introduce you to the councillors in attendance to tonight's meeting and I'll start to my left. We have Deputy Mayor Councillor Alida McKern, Councillor Peter Dimorellis, Councillor Alison Champion, and those councillors to my right, the Mayor, Councillor Peter Castaldo, Councillor Elizabeth Neely and Councillor Rick Garotti. This evening we are also joined by our executive team. We have Joe Wilson, Acting Director Community Wellbeing, Mark Giglio, Director Corporate Services, and Natasha Swan, Director City Development, and Darren Bennett, Director Assets and City Services. Also here tonight supporting the council group are members of the governance and IT teams and our JETS team coordinating our live stream. We thank you for participating in tonight's meeting. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Alison. And tonight our meeting is being held on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung people, and on behalf of Banyule City Council, I wish to acknowledge them as the traditional custodians, and we pay respect to all Aboriginal elders past, present and emerging who have resided in the area and been an integral part of our region's history and may be present this evening. And our council is committed to the values of diversity within our community. I will now read the Banyule Diversity Statement that demonstrates our commitment. Our community is made up of diverse cultures, beliefs, abilities, bodies, sexualities, ages and genders. We are committed to access, equity, participation and rights for everyone. Principles which empower, foster harmony and increase the well-being of an inclusive community. With that, I now move on to apologies. There are 3 councillors tonight. Councillor Di Pasquale is an apology, and Councillor Malikan and Councillor Mitsonikos are on approved leave of absence. We next move on to confirmation of minutes. The confirmation of minutes for the ordinary meeting of council held on the 28th of August 2023. Can I please have a councillor to move and second? Councillor Neely moved and seconded by Councillor Garotti. I now then put the motion. All those in favour? All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. The disclosures of interest, as required at any other council meeting, councillors must declare a conflict of interest at the start of a meeting and leave the meeting when the item is presented to council. Councillors will be required to leave the meeting and return when the item has been resolved. At any point throughout the meeting, if any other councillor recognises that they have a general or material interest, they can flag that at that point and follow the same procedure. Are there any disclosures of interest? No, there are no disclosures of interest. Officers that are present, I will now ask whether you have a conflict of interest in any items presented before council this evening.
Yes.
The CEO
Yeah.
has something?
Yeah. Yes, Mayor and councillors, I have a material conflict of interest to declare for item 11.3, which is in the confidential council meeting and outcomes from the CEO Employment Matters Committee meetings. This report considers my 12 months performance review and other employment matters. When the report is discussed, I will not be present and I'll leave the chamber at the time. My material conflict of interest is in a direct material conflict of interest in that under conflict of interest regimes of the Local Government Act 2020, I could stand to gain a benefit or suffer loss depending on the outcome of council's decision. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, with no other conflicts of interest are noted. We're now moving on to urgent business. I note that there is no urgent business this evening. And moving on to petitions next, I note that there are no petitions this evening. We now move on to item 3.1, Banyule Cemeteries Trust Operations Report. And first item is Banyule Cemeteries Trust Operations Report. There are no speakers to this item this evening. Councillors, there's an officer report before you as set out in the agenda papers. I'm now calling for a motion. Is there a mover? Councillor Garotti, seconded by Councillor McKern. As mover, would you like to speak to the item?
Not on this one regarding the trust.
Would the seconder like to speak to that? No? Any other councillors? No? I then will put the motion. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. We're now moving on to item 3.2, Banyule Cemeteries Trust Financial Statement. There are no speakers to this item also. Councillors, there's an officer report before you as set out on the agenda papers. I'm calling for a motion. Do we have a mover? Councillor Garotti, seconded by Councillor Neely. Would the mover like to speak to the item?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. It's probably captured in the recommendation, but good result for the trust. And I think over the last 5 or 6 years, every year, we sort of inform that the trust is not sustainable financially and it'll be delivering a deficit. And one way or another, it's been able to return a surplus. So that's a good outcome, and it does build up the corpus of that trust, which is then invested. But we know that there are long-term challenges with the trust. Thank you, Mayor.
Would the seconder like to speak to the item? Any other councillors? No. We now then put the motion. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. We now move on to item 3.3, Banyule Cemeteries Trust Abstract Accounts 2022-23. There are no speakers on this item. Councillors, there is an officer report before you as set out in the agenda papers. I'm calling for a motion.
Mayor, I just had a question about this item.
Yes?
If I may.
Go ahead.
Yeah, through you, Mayor, just to the appropriate officer. but just seeking advice on whether we need to just amend a recommendation that council, authorise two trust members to sign the abstract of accounts, because I note that they do need to be signed off. It appears in that abstract by two trust members. So should we be reflecting that in a recommendation, or are we comfortable with things as is?
Could the appropriate officer
Yeah.
please provide
Thank
some
you.
information?
Thank you, Councillor Grotti, and through you, Mayor. I don't see an issue per se with the way that the recommendation is written. However, you do identify some transparency recommendations, so I don't think there'd be any harm if we noted that it needed to be signed by the Mayor and another councillor. So happy either way.
Do we have, are you happy to move that as suggested?
Yeah, thank you, Mel. I'm happy to move, and with a slight amendment, that the Council 1 approve the abstract of accounts of Banyule Cemetery Trust for the period 1st of July 2022 to 30 June 2023, and the 2 authorise the Mayor and one other member of the Trust to sign the abstract of accounts and ensure they are submitted to the Department of Health as required under the legislation following satisfactory completion of the review by LDA Assurance. So moved, Mayor.
Thank you. We'll just amend that recommendation now. Just bear with us for a moment. We're just getting the words. Let's check with Councillor Garotti. Are you happy with that? Yes? Moved by Councillor Garotti. Who would like... All right, we've got another question. Councillor McKern.
A good point, Councillor. It should probably be authorise the trust chairperson and one other trust member to sign the abstract of accounts.
Mover happy with that? Do we have a seconder? Councillor Neely. Would the mover like to speak to the item?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I will speak just in the sense that obviously this is an example of the council being dynamically working through the business of council in a council meeting. And I note that it probably took us about 5 minutes thereabouts to work through something relatively straightforward. So I know that at the moment the IBAC is looking and with state government as to how council meeting proceedings are conducted. And I think this is just, we should reflect upon this, that the challenges associated with moving substantial amendments, if we had to do that for each and every agenda item. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, councillor. Would the second like to speak to the item? No. Any other councillor? No. I then put the motion. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. We now move on to item 3.4, Audit and Risk Committee Biannual Report 2022-2023. There are no speakers on this item this evening. Councillors, there's an officer report before you as set out on the agenda papers. I'm now calling for a motion. Do we have a mover? Councillor Neely, and seconded by Councillor Grotti. Would the mover like to speak to the item?
Thank you, Mayor. The Audit and Risk Committee Biannual Report from the 1st of December 2022 to the 30th of May 23 was adopted by the committee at its meeting last week on the 23rd of June, and is now tabled for adoption by Council. On the 4th of September, was what I was referring to, the committee chairperson, Dr. Irene Irvine, met with councillors and provided us with an annual update on activities of the committee and a reflection of her term as committee chair. So some of the highlights over the last 6 months were the appointment and the commencement of Pitcher Partners as Banyul's internal audit services provider for an initial period of 3 years. A 6-month strategic internal audit plan was revised by Pitcher Partners with management input and the committee, and approved by the committee on the 24th of March. There were a number of internal audits tabled at the committee in addition to safety metrics, quarterly financial management report, a protected data security maturity assessment findings, and an updated fraud and corruption control policy. A few more that I'll mention are the continuation of Banyul's increase in the maturity of its risk management approach and the tabling of Vago's draft audit strategy for the financial year ending the 30th of June. So council management also provides updates in relation to reviews conducted by integrity agencies such as the Victorian Auditor General's Office and Independent Broad-Based Anti-Corruption Commission, Local Government Inspectorate and the Victorian Ombudsman, who issue reports on local government and those relevant to the sector. The committee also checked off its responsibilities contained in the annual work plan. So overall, as the report outlines, it's a very productive 6 months with a great deal of work done by the organisation for the committee and to provide oversight on risk insurance and financial management. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Would the seconder like to speak to the item?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of brief comments. Well done, Councillor Neely, for really summing up that report and the briefing that we received. As is covered in the recommendation, the whole council received an in-person briefing from the Audit and Risk Committee Chair. One thing that I'm keen to explore, and I may table at the next Audit and Risk Committee meeting, and then for further consideration by Council, is having the opportunity for the chairperson to attend a briefing that's also available to the community, to ask questions for the community, to have that direct access to the chair of an Audit and Risk Committee and to be able to ask questions. So not looking, putting it in the recommendation, but I'm just sort of flagging to council and to the community. That's something that I've mulled in my mind, and I think it could be a really good feature of enhancing community accountability of this council. Thank you, Mayor. Thank
you, councillor. Any other councillors? No, I'll just say that on attendance on Friday last week as well, I think Dr. Irvine Irene, it was her last chairing of that Audit and Risk Committee. And it was a very productive meeting, and I think everyone's noting the valuable contribution of the auditors, the new auditors we've signed up. And I'm also very supportive of that opportunity for our community members to put the question to the chair as well. So we're always looking for ways to improve our Audit and Risk Committee, and I think we're doing a pretty good job in there. And officers are definitely producing significant reports for that meeting for us all to get a better grip of some of the detail that they've got to get and on top of. I will now then put the motion. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. We are now moving on to item 3.5, in principle approval of the financial statements and performance statement for the year ended 30 of June 2023. There are no speakers on this item this evening. Councillors, there's an officer report before you as set out on the agenda papers. I'm now calling for a motion. Councillor Neely, seconded by...
Mayor, I'm wondering if the mover might be open to a slight addition to the officer recommendation or foreshadowing as such.
Please speak to the item.
Yeah, just foreshadowing a potential point number 4, that council note that it received the Victorian Auditor General closing report and final management letter, and that no issues were raised in either of those documents. I think it would be important to reflect that in a recommendation.
Is the mover happy for that amendment?
Happy with the amendment from Councillor Grotti?
I might just check with governance you're comfortable with that? Yes? All right, so mover's happy to move it. And Councillor Grotti, would you like to second that? All right, would the mover like to speak to the item?
Thank you, Mayor. I was thinking of last week on the last item. On the 22nd last week, Councillor Grotti, the Mayor and I met to review the financial and performance statements for the year ending the 30th of June. And this recommendation tonight is to approve in principle the financial statements. The process going forward is the report is received from the Victorian Auditor General's office and subsequently presented to the public at a council meeting. They do their final check, they sign off, and then we will note this in October and including the report of operations. So the process is still underway. Thanks, Mayor.
And would the seconder like to speak to the item?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Happy to speak to the item. So these accounts come to us with the recommendation that they be signed by the Independent Audit and Risk Committee. The Independent Audit and Risk Committee received a closing report from the Victorian Auditor General raising no issues, and what was very pleasing as well, no audit adjustments. So a big congratulations to Mark and Tanya and her team for delivering that. That's not an easy thing to do. The other thing was that in the management letter, no new audit issues were raised. And again, congratulations to the whole council on that. That's not an easy thing to do, to get through an audit process without Vargo raising any issues. So in that context, I'm very pleased to be moving the accounts. On the surface, they look like a good set of books for this council in terms of an overall surplus and an increase in our cash position and an improvement in our balance sheet. But when you interrogate between the lines, even those accounts show some of the issues that we are grappling with as a council. Our delivery of capital works reduced from about 40 million to 33 million. And in essence, that was a key component of helping the council to achieve its operating results surplus and maintaining its cash position. That's a one-trick type situation. You know, we've got a healthy capital works program going forward. So what these accounts show us is that although the council is in a sound position, there's a lot of work to be done to maintain that going forward. And there are a range of cost pressures that are coming to this council. So what I would suggest is that, yes, we can pause and we can reflect that we're in a good position. The staff can be confident in the financial sustainability of the council. The community can as well. Debt is down and we're not running a deficit. But I think, like I said at the last council meeting, this isn't an opportunity for us to be going around and giving ourselves a big pat on the back, because there's a lot of hard work to be done given the challenges that we're facing as a council. And I just think it's really important to deliver that tempered message, and for the community to know that we're being modest about things, mature about things, because we know that there's a lot of challenges ahead. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, councillor. Any other councillors? No? I'll just reiterate the significant work that's gone into this to the whole of the financial team and everyone that supported them. No issues and no amendments. It's great work. Thank you. I will now move to just going back to just check, is the mover and seconder happy with the words? Yes?
No issues with the wording, thank you, Mayor.
Excellent. I now put the motion. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. We're now moving on to item 3.6, property transactions report for 6 months period ending the 30th of June 2023. There are no speakers to this item. Councillors, there's an officer report before you as set out in the agenda papers. I'm now calling for a motion. Do I have a mover? Councillor Garozzi. Seconder, Councillor Neely. Would the mover like to speak to the item?
Yeah, happy to speak to it, and noting that there were two really good positive acquisitions that have occurred and that are reflected in this report. So obviously, and Councillor Di Pasquale as well asked that we just highlight this one, the purchase at 74 Watsonia Road, Watsonia. So that's the car park there. Believe it or not, although it's always looked and felt and operated like a public space that's owned by council, it was owned by the church. And so we're able to resolve, on good terms for both them and us, and they are a community charitable organisation, to acquire that land, and we can go ahead now with the full redevelopment of the Watsonia Town Square. And for residents in that area, they would know that that is going full steam ahead now. A lot of activity and construction work, and I think hopefully being managed, but happy to hear resident feedback on that. And the second property is at 7 Wellington Street, Montmorency, and that's offering us the opportunity for a community hub or neighbourhood house in that area, which has been identified by a community infrastructure plan as a deficient location in the council for a community resource. So it's just really pleasing that, we sell land as a council where we identify that it might be not in accordance with our needs at the time, and we use that then to invest in new land and new opportunities that are better aligned to where we need to go. And the reason that I highlight that is because further in the agenda, we're being asked to consider to enter into two processes to potentially consider sales of land. And I think it's just important for the community to note that we also do reinvest in new land, and it's all about what is right for Banyule at the time and what our priority is and what the community need is. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Would the seconder like to speak to the item?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Councillor Gruddy summed that up well. I just wanted to highlight that council purchased 7 Wellington Street as a strategic property to consider a community facility in the Montmorency area, and we have an expression of interest already for a suitable operator, and that operator will program some activities to meet community needs. We're well prepared, and we're strongly advocating to state government for shared funding to establish programs and infrastructure improvements for the facility. So lots of potential going forward. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Any other councillors? No, I'll just note that sometimes we hear from the community we should not be selling any council land, but I think up on the screen before us there's a couple of examples where it is a good reason to sell it to help enable property owners to deliver better outcomes, and it's the same for council. We've got 2 investments up there that are very good strategically for council, that we're going to deliver good outcomes for our community, both in the Watsonia Town Square and the Montmorency Community Hub. So I'm very supportive of the work that went into this report and has come to council. I now then put the motion. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. We're now moving on to item 3.7, record of councillor meetings. There are no speakers to this item this evening. Councillors, there's an officer report before you as set out in agenda papers, but I believe there's an amendment to that. Do we have a councillor to move that? Councillor Champion.
Thanks, Mayor. Just an observation. Council receives and notes the record of councillor meetings report with a minor administrative amendment for the record of councillor attendance for the 28th of August 2023 pre-briefing meeting. The amendment to be reflected in the meeting minutes and corrects Councillor McKern as the Deputy Mayor and not Councillor Champion as originally transcribed.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Neely. Would the mover like to speak to the item? Seconder? Any other councillor? No, thank you, Councillor Champion, for the eagle eyes. There's a lot of papers in here. And you spotted one mistake. Very good. I now would put the motion. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. We're now moving on to item 4.1, draft Banyule volunteer policy and memorandum of understanding, endorsement for community consultation. There are no speakers to this item this evening. Councillors, there's an officer report before you as set out on the agenda papers. I'm calling for a motion, and I believe there is an amendment. Councillor McKern.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to point out that the amendment relates to point 2 in pink, and it is to endorse additional targeted consultation action for the draft Banyule volunteer policy that includes the following conditions: 2 face-to-face engagement forums be held throughout the consultation period. All listed Banyule Environment Friends of Groups, EFOGs, to be invited to the face-to-face engagement forums. The face-to-face engagement forums to facilitate and encourage discussion and feedback on the proposed Banyule Environment Friends of Groups Memorandum of Understanding between volunteers and members of council staff, and to facilitate constructive networking. Invitations are to extend to all councillors and the opportunity to be afforded to councillors to open and introduce the forums, and invitations to the consultation to extend to the Friends of Darebin Parklands and the Friends of Eaglemont Village.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Garotti, would the mover like to speak to the item?
Thank you, Mayor. This report has twofold purpose. First, council is being asked to endorse the draft volunteer policy for community consultation. The draft volunteer policy framework is a significant initiative for Banyule due to the popularity of volunteering in Banyule, and Banyule punches well above its weight in comparison to Greater Melbourne, with a much higher than average participation in volunteering. Second, the report responds to a notice of motion that you'll recall, Mayor, I raised at the 15th of August 2022 meeting of Council for guidelines for environmental volunteers working on council land. And it's that I'd like to focus on. With respect to the proposed MOU for Banyule EF of groups, so environmental friends of groups. We know that many residents choose Banyule as their home for its abundance of open space. Banyule owns and manages more than 600 hectares of open space on behalf of its community. And that's vital to the objectives of Banyule's environmental strategic plans, that we involve friends and other environmental groups to assist in this work. We have 10 bushland management crew, impossible for them to manage 600 hectares of open space, including the entirety of our biodiversity areas. So the NOM I raised last year was for guidelines for environmental groups to be produced by Council in collaboration with our friends of groups that reconciles Council's obligations, especially with regards to risk management and volunteer vision. I believe that a success story of volunteering is community empowerment. Advancing shared interests of community and agency advances community development and builds our city's social and environmental capital. This can only truly happen via bona fide, meaningful collaboration between council and community. And to this end, Mayor, I'm putting forward this alternative motion. For these face-to-face forums that mean that we can have meaningful discussion and feedback on the proposed MOUs, even though I had originally raised them as guidelines, very interested to hear what our friends of groups have to say. And also that it be an opportunity for networking between the volunteer groups so that they can hear what each other have to say. So looking forward to those, and hopefully we have support from the rest of the councillor group to proceed with community consultation on both aspects and with the face-to-face forums.
Thank you, councillor. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Garotti. Would the mover like to speak to the item? Oh, sorry. Sorry, my laptop is forcing a restart. So would the seconder like to speak to the item? No? Any other councillors? Councillor Neely?
Thank you, Mayor. This policy is about a consistent approach in supporting our volunteers, and it outlines agreements on how groups can volunteer on council land and how they can be supported when doing so. We want to foster these relationships between council and the community, and a consultation process, as mentioned, will take place for stakeholders to provide feedback. Council works with 150 volunteers in diverse areas, so this policy provides clarity for me as a councillor, but also clarity around the responsibilities and expectations of volunteers as well as council. So there may be some concerns, there may be some things to iron out. The targeted consultation will give that opportunity for these concerns to be ironed out. So I look forward to hearing what the outcome is. Thank you, Mayor.
Any other councillors? No, I'd just like to acknowledge the work that Councillor McKern put to this, putting the notice of motion up first, and the ongoing contribution to this subject matter. I think it's really important, this framework, because it's our residents that can really up the quality of Banyule, because the footwork and the hard work of all of our volunteers in Banyule can really make a significant contribution. And we've got a number of groups that is very evident that they're making significant contributions. So I think when we get the policy in place, we have that conversation with the community that they're comfortable with it, they're happy with it, so they can constructively work forward with council, and having the terms of reference and the guidelines and all those documents that can help support that relationship, I think will only go, support council to move forward. So I will now then put the motion. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. We're now moving on to item 5.1, proposed urban food strategy. There are no speakers on this item this evening, and councillors, there is an officer report before you as set out in the agenda papers. I'm calling for a motion. Councillor McKern, I believe there's an amendment.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to point out the amendment to the officer's recommendation, highlighted again in pink, that the additional actions be included in the proposed Urban Food Strategy Action Plan, that councillors have the opportunity to champion food-related initiative and progress to be reported back to council via the Banyule Environment and Climate Action Advisory Committee, otherwise known as BCAC. A nominated councillor be appointed as a chair of the proposed Urban Food Working Group, and the Urban Food Working Group recommendations and strategic achievements to be reported to council via the BCAC and State of Environment report. In addition, there is a point 3. Note that a mayor and deputy mayor forward will be included in the final urban food strategy, which will be drafted in consultation with the mayor and deputy mayor. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Grotti, would the mover like to speak to the item?
Thank you, Mayor. It's actually with great pleasure that I'm speaking on behalf of this item tonight. It's been a wonderful journey and it's been an honour to work with a really engaged councillor group, staff and community group to prepare the inaugural urban food strategy for the city of Banyule. Very timely. Banyule community is really actively engaged in a range of urban food activities. So it was terrific to be able to pull those together and understand what it is we have in terms of an asset base, our community gardens, our food swaps, our backyard veggie growing. COVID-19 has encouraged a lot more interest in food security and food growing for personal interest. And we've been able to work and discuss this space and how we can engage more as a council to improve food security and food initiatives. When I first raised this initiative, there were a number of things that I was hoping to achieve, Mayor, and they were to establish a vision for urban foods, for urban food in this municipality, improve our health and well-being of residents in Banyule, address food security, advocate for retention of Melbourne's peri-urban and green wedge food growing areas, support food-friendly neighbourhoods, and consider an urban food system for Banyule in relation to sustainability, social justice, climate change, biodiversity and economic opportunities. And Mayor, I believe this strategy works hard to address these issues and establishes a robust action plan to deliver on key objectives. It's also considered reporting relationships and how we're going to implement this strategy. Food affects us all and we all engage with food at some level. It would be terrific if all of our councillors could champion a food cause, either specific to their ward or with a more general appeal and purpose for the greater municipality. Tonight, no surprise, I'll be supporting the tabled recommendations, and I wish to thank everyone who's been involved in the preparation of the strategy. I also wish to thank councillors who've already put their hands up to champion a cause. Councillor Grotti, who's doing work with Banyule, with Bundoora Secondary College, and also Councillor Castaldo, who's working on climate change impacts and food security. Mayor, before I finish, I would like the opportunity through you for the Acting Director of Community Wellbeing to say a few words, Jo Wilson. Very fortunate to have her tonight here because she has been the staff member driving this together with her staff, Danielle Clark. If she could be invited to say a few words, I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, through the Mayor, for this opportunity. It's been a really exciting process. We know that across Banyule there's been a lot of issues facing the community around cost of living, food security, but also the opportunity for groups to have a better understanding of food sustainability and food literacy. So working with Sustain, who are experts in this area, working with Councillor McKern in particular, and with a fantastic group of community members from urban farms, community gardens, neighbourhood houses. I think we've developed a really good strategy and action plan to move us forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Would the second like to speak to the item?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Very happy to speak on this item, and really just to call out and congratulate our Deputy Mayor, Councillor McKern, who put it on the agenda for Council. So I think this is a really good example, and obviously if adopted, of how you can have an idea that's come from the community and table it at Council, and it's worked through a process, getting it into the budget for some seed funding to do the work, running a process of consultation and getting a strategy together. So I think it's a really good example of when you're passionate about something, and when you, particularly of something of such significance and importance to our community. I mean, in many respects, nothing's more important than food. I mean, food is the foundation of our lives. And so for Councillor McKern to bring this process through, I think it's just congratulations. I think it's a terrific strategy. And I think it's a strategy as well that has a number of practical elements. And one of them that I'm particularly excited about is work that this council's already beginning to look at doing in partnership with Bundoora Secondary College. They have some tremendously innovative programs. They've got a farm there, farm animals that they engage the students in. They're looking at horticulture and agriculture. So for us to be able to partner them and to offer some really great learning experiences for their students and boosting food innovation and food security in Banyule, really practical outcome coming out of this strategy, and very happy to support. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillors wish to speak to the item? Councillor Neely?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I really like the practical actions from this strategy, like supporting urban farming and community gardens moving forward. In Bill Ward, we have Green Hills Neighbourhood House that provides food relief, fruit and veg for those struggling in the wider area. So not just in the Banyule area, but beyond Banyule. And, the data that tells us that the demand for this service is increasing exponentially and has done so over the past 3 years. It's possible that we sometimes take our food security for granted. So this strategy will help us understand urban food systems, food sustainability, accessibility and food security across, what's on offer for organisations and services. So Councillor McKern has been passionate in advocating for this, and it's a very important thing, and we thank you for bringing this at the forefront of our discussions. I personally agree with the community feedback that planning for healthy and sustainable food systems is one of the top priorities, and we can start simply by supporting Banyule's community gardens and other food assets that we have. So raising the profile and increasing awareness is a stepping stone towards the goal, which is an integrated food system. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillors? No, I'll just like to note the tremendous amount of work and effort put on by Councillor McKern and other councillors that have jumped in at certain stages along the process. I'd also like to thank the council staff team and headed by Joe Wilson. Whenever there was something on to do with this, I saw Joe there. So it's great to have you here with us this evening, and to all those in the staff that participated. Also to all those in the community that have invested a significant amount of time. Food's important to everyone. There's a lot of people in our community dedicated to this subject matter. And when the report talks to us about the importance of everyone being fed, it's something that I don't think about in my home, but there's a lot of people that don't have the funds, find themselves in difficult circumstances. This is a very important document that ensures we as a council are going to do our best to make sure that no one in Banyule goes without. So I think it's a very good document. and also ensuring that we have a long-term sustainability of food supply, both locally and globally, I think is very important. So one of the environmental elements I'm very much interested in is to ensure that climate change impacts with food and how we can make sure that everyone is well fed into the future. And I'll also like to note that we have a beautiful little community garden down in my ward, St John's Community Garden, Riverside Garden, and apiary down there. There's a lot of tremendous little organisations through Banyule, and if this document can go to celebrate that, I think it goes a long way. So thank you to both Councillor McKern and Joe Wilson and everyone else involved. With that, I will now put the motion. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. We're now moving on to item 5.2, container deposit scheme. There are no speakers to this item this evening. Councillors, there's an officer report before you as set out on the agenda papers. I'm now calling, we have a question.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick question for the Director. Just from reading the report, I was just wanting to know why there isn't a location for reverse vending machines north of McLeod.
Thanks for your question. And through you, Mayor, when we had a look at the site requirements to actually house these reverse vending machines, there was no suitable location on council land which was able to be identified. However, it's important to note that Visy, who's the provider, is negotiating with a number of commercial land owners at the moment and looking to confirm a location in the northern part of the city. And in addition to that, over-the-counter opportunities for refunds may also be available through businesses, community groups and sporting clubs should they wish to nominate as a deposit location.
Thank you.
Do we have a mover? Councillor McKern, seconded by Councillor Neely. Would the mover like to speak to the item?
Thank you, Mayor. It's probably important to point out that this is a state government program commencing in November, and it's part of the state's waste and recycling initiatives to reduce the number of beverage containers going into the environment and landfill in particular, working towards a clean waste stream to drive our circular economy. CDS, as it's known, CDS Vic, will allow Victorians to return their used drink cans, bottles and cartons for a 10-cent refund. The Victorian Government advises that it aims to reduce Victoria's litter by up to half, create new economic opportunities and generate 645 jobs and turn drink containers into new recycled products. They're all admirable aims, Mayor. This initiative will also bring Victoria into line with other states and territories, all of which, except Victoria and Tassie, have this scheme already in place. So the report tells us that Visy Recycling is the scheme operator for Banyule, and there'll be a series of council and non-council collection points, as has been alluded to by Councillor Neely and mentioned by our Director, points in Banyule. So it's important to note too that 3 collection points are identified for Banyule at this time, and each collection point takes up the equivalent of 5 parking bays, which is about 60 plus square metres per bay. So with respect to the use by Visy of council land, which was one of my key questions to host these collection points, how will that work? Well, it means that a licence agreement will be prepared in collaboration with 12 councils and Visy, whereby Visy will pay for the use of council land. On a practical note, depositing containers won't incur a cash refund. So if you're busy collecting containers, and I used to do the same as a kid, take them down to the local milk bar and see if I could get a paddle pop in exchange for a basket full of glass bottles. This system won't actually incur a cash refund. Residents depositing containers can opt to have the refund go into a bank account or nominate a charity to which the refund can be donated. I think there might be another way too, and I'm just through you, Mayor, might ask the Director of City Services and Assets, are there any other ways of receiving a refund?
Excuse me, through you, Mayor. No, I believe those are the main ways. You nominate your account, it goes straight in, or you nominate a charity that you can donate that refund to, and that accumulates, every time you put a refund in.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Very much, and that's it for me.
Thank you, councillor. The second, I'd like to speak to you.
Oh, no, Councillor can sum that well as well. Just that this is an additional scheme to collect materials to avoid waste generation. We're already doing a lot, but this is an important thing just to get the broader community on board with not adding to waste. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor. Any other councillors wish to speak? No, I'll take the opportunity. I think this is an important initiative to reduce the waste of good materials. But containers should really be all deposited in our recycle bins. So the question is, what's the benefit of the deposit scheme? Well, the deposit scheme is really here to stop people littering. It's unfortunate that happens, but it's a costly initiative for us to put into the system to collect waste this way. And so for me, it's a challenging discussion, a complex one, that we shouldn't need to be investing in this, but because of behaviours of people, this will increase the collection. So I'm supportive of it, but I think it's unfortunate we need to have such systems because we have bins that should already be doing this work for us. But I think it should reduce waste and litter in the creeks and waterbeds and across Banyule into the future. So I'll now put the motion. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. We are now moving on to item 6.1, 59 Swanson Street, Heidelberg Heights, commencement of notice of intention to sell land. There are 3 speakers on this item this evening. Rhianna Wilson will address council in person as speaking against the recommendation. Rhianna, please approach the lectern. You have 2 minutes to speak.
Hi, I'm Rhianna. I live at 59 with my 2 children. My oldest daughter is autistic and we really love our little house, and it's just really hard at the moment because I've actually been looking for a place to move for over a year now. Sorry. And I can't find anywhere. Sorry. I'm a single mum, and I built a really good community with my neighbours. So I've been looking for ages for a house, and the housing market at the moment. Sorry.
You can take a minute if you like.
Yeah. Sorry. It pains me to see so many houses in the area being knocked down for more multi-dwelling houses. Because it's really hard for people like me. Sorry. Sorry. I just think that displacing more people at the moment. My friends are both wonderful people and they're also going to be displaced. I've had a lot of my neighbours recently been displaced. Their house has been sold to property developers. 2 of my friends are homeless with their small child. And I just don't think this is a very good time with cost of living crisis and everything to be displacing more people. I'm sorry.
No, take your time, it's okay.
Also, I just think our houses are really nice houses.
they've just recently been fixed up and there's no problems with them. The minor plumbing issues that we've had don't seem to warrant knocking them down and building entirely new residents. It just feels like it's not very environmentally sensible to, like, I'd understand if they were like falling apart houses, but if you look at the housing situation, at the moment, there are a lot of really bad houses that people are renting and these aren't them. And I'm really grateful for the council for providing us with a home over the past 3 years. And yeah, I wrote stuff down on it. I seem to, but yeah, I just hope that you reconsider, thank you, reconsider the proposed sale. Because me and my children will face homelessness. Sorry. Thank
Take
you.
your time, we've stopped the clock, so you can gather your thoughts.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time. But thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mayor, can I ask a question, please? Can I
Yeah.
ask, if you have something to read, would you like me to read it for you?
Yeah, thank you,
So we have
Councillor
2
Champion.
minutes, is that right? We have 2 minutes?
Oh, if you could just read it out, thank you.
Okay. My name is Rhianna Kate Wilson. I stand before you today not just as an individual, but as a representative of a community facing a critical housing crisis. I reside at 2 at 59 Swanston Street in Heidelberg Heights, along with my 2 children, Kia, aged 16, who is autistic, and Gicardia, who is 8 years old. I'm a single mother with 100% custody of my children. Our humble, well-maintained unit has been our sanctuary for the last 3 years. We cherish our little home for a multitude of reasons, and the thought of it being sold off to property developers is heart-wrenching. The truth is, I don't believe such a move would benefit our community in any meaningful way. These houses are wonderful, and our children have grown to find a sense of belonging here. It would be devastating to see them lose that. I have built a strong bond with my neighbours, Maiko and Gemma. All 3 of us share the common thread of having neurodivergent autistic children, and we lean on each other for support during times of need. These houses in their peaceful location provide an ideal, safe space for special needs children to thrive. For the past 1.5 years, I've been tirelessly searching for a property with more space to accommodate the needs of my growing children. However, the housing market is now rather competitive and ruthless in nature, and I have not managed to find anywhere to relocate to in over a year of searching. If my current home is sold to property developers, the grim reality is that my children and I will face homelessness. There simply aren't enough housing options available, especially for special needs children. I'm currently on a waiting list for public housing because my disability, chronic illness and caring duties have rendered me unable to work. But it still may take several years before I reach the top of the list and gain secure long-term housing. I've called the Banyule area my home for many years now, and it's a community I deeply cherish. Sadly, I've watched several of my friends and neighbours being evicted from nearby streets as their rentals have been sold to developers. One friend now resides far away in Ballarat, disconnected from the community they love, while other friends of mine remain homeless and have been couch surfing for the past 3 months with their small child, unable to secure housing after their eviction. It pains me to see so many houses around me being torn down and people being displaced. I fail to comprehend why my current home, which holds so much significance for me and my children, would be sacrificed for more multi-dwelling complexes. It simply isn't socially or environmentally responsible to demolish 3 perfectly wonderful dwellings. The plumbing issues I've experienced, like a blocked toilet, were minor and short-lived, hardly a reason to justify such drastic measures as demolishing the buildings to start again. All issues with the units have been recently repaired, adding to my confusion as to why council would now decide to sell the land to developers. In closing, I urge you to consider the broader implications of displacing families like mine. We are part of a community that relies on the stability of our homes, especially when we have children with special needs. We face financial constraints, a competitive housing market, and an alarming lack of affordable options. The emotional well-being of our children is at stake, and the ripple effects of our displacement will be felt through the community bonds we've established. Our story is not unique, it is urgent. We implore the Banyule City Council to recognise the housing requirements of families with special needs within our community and to prioritise our stability and security. Let us not forget we are in the midst of a housing crisis and a cost of living crisis, so the loss of our housing now would have a devastating effect on my family and our friends in the neighbouring houses. I'm very grateful to Banyule Council for providing us with such a wonderful, affordable home, and I sincerely hope you will reconsider the proposed sale and continue to provide my family and neighbours with secure and affordable housing. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me.
Yeah. Thank you, Rihanna and Councillor Champion. Next up, we have Gemma Wilson, who will address Council in person, speaking against the recommendation. Gemma, please press your lectern, you have 2 minutes to speak.
Hey, hello, my name is Gemma Wilson and I also reside at 59 Swanson Street. I'm in Unit 1. I'm joined by Rihanna and Maiko today to oppose the sale of the property. We only heard about this on Friday, so please excuse us for trying to get everything organised. Firstly, we just want you to consider the human element in the decision. We are 3 single mothers with neurodivergent children. We found safety, security and stability in the very well-maintained units that we've been very fortunate to have, provided by the council. Any disruption by the sale and potential relocation will obviously have quite severe consequences on us and our children, particularly during the housing crisis. My son is 6 years old with autism and ADHD, and all of our children rely on the NDIS services that are available in the area that we live in. To have such abrupt changes obviously is quite challenging for autistic children, but just not to mention the emotional and financial impact that also will have on us as primary carers. We also just want to emphasise the fact that the community that we have built in the area has been in support we never thought we could have, even between the 3 of us and our children. So losing the sense of belonging would be quite devastating. We are fortunate that the council upholds diversity and inclusion as paramount values, as stated in the diversity statement read out earlier this evening. Just to reiterate that is about a community made up of diverse cultures, beliefs, abilities, bodies, sexualities, ages and genders. Committed to access, empowerment and obviously an inclusive community. So the proposed sale of this property contradicts principles of responsible resource management and sustainability. The property includes 3 units that have recently undergone renovations. The idea of demolishing them to build apartments is environmentally reckless. Responsible resource management should encompass the social impact as on vulnerable community members like us. In conclusion, we urge the council to reconsider the sale of 59 Swanston Street in light of significant and the adverse effects that they will have on our lives and also the residents in the area, and that we request alternative solutions such as maintaining the property for affordable and sustaining housing be explored for the wellbeing of the community. Thank you for your consideration. Thanks.
Thank you, Gemma. Next up, we have Maiko O'Reilly, who will address council in person, speaking against the recommendation. Maiko, please approach the lectern. You have 2 minutes.
Hi, my name is Maiko O'Reilly, and I am one of the tenants at 59 Swanston Street. I'm a single mom of a teenage boy with autism and intellectual disability. I'm also a migrant, and we have no other family members here. My son's father is not involved in his life at all, so I'm doing everything solo. It's difficult, but I have a support network here. My neighbors Rihanna, Gemma, and myself are all single moms with special needs children. We have built good, unique support connections as our situations are all similar. We can share stories of parenting, with information on NDIS, and emotionally support each other. Our children rely on NDIS funding. My son has 4 support workers, 3 therapists, and he goes to a local special school. He attends Respite Center in Heidelberg Heights. He's going to graduate from school next year, and I was going to prepare a slow transition into adult services for him with the help of his current support network. When I heard about the council's intention to sell our units, I was totally in shock. Considering the current rental market, it's almost impossible for us to find similar rental properties that meets our children's needs in the current area. High-rise apartments or share house are not option for us due to our support needs. We are at great risk of homelessness. Relocation means we will lose all the support network we have established over the years. And that will affect all the aspects of our children's life. Therapy, support workers, school, and respite facility, everything. Our children are vulnerable. We are already going through so much every day as a single parent. If we have to relocate now, the damage and impact on our kids will be too great. All we want is to provide the best environment for our children. So I would like to request the council to reconsider the decision and prioritize the well-being of the most vulnerable community members over financial gains. Thank you so much for taking time to listen to me.
Thank you, Michael. Now, I believe there's a couple of questions. Councillor McKern.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to our speakers, Rihanna, Gemma and Maiko. My question, Mayor, through you, is to the Acting Director of Community Wellbeing. I have heard what our speakers tonight have said, but a question that I would like answered, if possible, is for the residents of 59 Swanson Street, Heidelberg Heights, is there a possibility that Council could assist in referral to a referral service that may assist residents with relocation to new homes?
Thank you, through the Mayor. I'm really sad to hear your circumstances, and it is really difficult in the housing crisis, but we can meet with you to talk about what services are available locally. You may be aware of some of those, but we would be happy to meet with you and talk through what some of the alternative accommodation service providers might be to help in this situation.
We have another question? No, same question.
Mayor, I'm just flagging that I'll be looking to raise an alternative recommendation.
Yep, thank you, Councillor. Look, there's one more question. There is a special reason why this is coming to Council to do with drainage. Could I please have the relative Director speak to that?
Thank you, Mayor. The property at Swanson Street was purchased by Council historically as the 2 rear units have been approved below the flood levels for the property. So some minor remediation works have been done, but those properties remain below the flood levels. They're currently unable to be insured. And should we have a reasonable overland flow event in those areas, those properties would be inundated, particularly in the lower levels. And there's nothing we can do by way of works to actually repair that. Council's considering a potential opportunity for redevelopment of the whole site following the removal of the 2 rear units, which really at this point in time would have to be demolished in order to ensure their ongoing protection from ongoing damage due to flooding. And as part of that proposal, considered also removing the front dwelling and potentially seeking approval for new units across the whole site. But that's just an idea and a concept. The report tonight really is around consideration of commencing a process that would allow exploration potentially by a future purchaser around that. Whether or not they proceed with a redevelopment option, the option would certainly be available to a future purchaser to take on the liability of the 2 rear dwellings that do have those attributes and challenges, but it's not something that Council would normally own a property of this nature that provides for private housing, It really is a case of council stepping in due to that error that occurred in relation to the construction and approval of those dwellings below the flood line.
Thank you. Councillor Garotti?
Sorry, I have one
Yeah.
question as well. Just through you, Mayor,
Councillor
to the
Demorales.
Director, what's the process here? What's the timeframes for the gallery?
Yes, Councillor De Morales, and through you, Mayor, the process would commence tonight. If council were to resolve to commence the process, we would give notice to the community of our intention to sell. If we receive submissions, council would consider those submissions in due course, and then ultimately it would come back to council for a decision as to whether it intended to sell. It's entirely at the discretion of council as to when they wish to proceed with the sale in principle. Should they intend to proceed with the sale, it's also in council's hands as to when they would act on that. So a decision to intend to sell doesn't require the council to then immediately act on such a decision.
And one further question would be that has this property with intention to sell been taken into account the affordability strategy for houses in Banyule?
Councillor Demorales, I guess in answer and through you, Mayor, because it's not normal for council to own residential properties, and because we find ourselves owning this property because of the errors that were made in relation to the construction of the rear units, it doesn't form part of our consideration necessarily for the supply of affordable housing. We've effectively bought the liability and the error and the loss that comes from having allowed the units to be built in a situation where they really can't be retained. And the sale of the land helps us to recoup some of the cost that comes from that liability.
Councillor Garotti?
Yeah, Mayor, if I may, I'd like to put forward an alternative recommendation.
Would you like to speak to that?
I'd like to put forward that council not proceed with the sale, with the process to sell the land at 59 Swanson Street, Heidelberg Heights.
Councillor McKern?
An addition to his foreshadowed motion, and that is that perhaps that the land not be sold until alternative accommodations are found for the residents.
No, I want to stick to my proposal that we not sell the land.
We've got a request to take recess. I'll just check in with governance.
Yes,
That's
through you,
appropriate
Mayor,
process?
you can call for a suspension of standing orders or an adjournment. We just need a mover and a seconder to do that.
I'll just like to call for an adjournment. All those in favour?
I'll move it.
Moved by Councillor Neely, seconded by Councillor Champion, for 5 minutes while we discuss the matter further.
Through you, Mayor, you just need to take a vote on that.
Yep, we have? All in favour? All in favour. Just for those online, we will be back with you in about 5 minutes' time. We need to discuss this matter a little bit further. Not yet. I'd just like to note for those in the audience and those at home tuning in, we just adjourned the meeting to discuss the council item on the agenda, 6.1 Swanston Street. We've just come back and I'd just like to thank you for your patience while we had further discussions. Now, I believe there is a new recommendation before us. I'll just wait for the officers to put that up for us. And I believe there are additional questions for officers.
Yeah, so through you, Mayor, and to the appropriate director, was how is this property rented? I'll wait till you, sorry, I put you on the spot as you're walking away. So for everyone to know, how is this property rented? As council, the renter, or as the property owner?
Yes, through you, Mayor. This property is rented through a traditional private rental arrangement through a real estate agent. So we don't rent directly, we use an agent to manage that.
Are we aware of who are the tenants?
No, insofar as they're identified in the name on the lease, but not of their personal circumstances, no.
Thank you.
Any further questions? No? Is the prepared new recommendation ready?
Yeah, hi Mayor, I'm happy to read it out, an alternative, and while the officers look to put it up on the screen, if that be okay?
Yes.
So that council resolve not to sell the property at this time, point number 1. Point number 2, notes the liability that does exist by retaining this property due to their construction below the flood level. 3, that officers consult with the tenants to assist them in finding alternative accommodation. And 4, that officers bring a report at a future time regarding the alternative accommodation arrangements and for consideration of a potential sale process at a more appropriate time. I think the only thing that's missing there on the screen is potential sale process at a more appropriate time. So moved, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Do we have a seconder?
Happy to second it.
Councillor Demorales. Would the mover like to speak to the item?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Very happy to speak. And I think I've got 3 minutes as the mover. And we might need 3 and maybe more. Just for the benefit of the gallery, probably what happened then in my time as a councillor in 10 years is unprecedented for us to have had to call a recess during a meeting. And I think that is just a reflection of the fact that we were all moved in a very deep way by the 3 speakers and by the circumstances that you're in and then the way that you presented this issue to council. As Councillor Demorales pointed out through the questions to officers, with these properties, they're managed by an independent real estate agent. We obviously had no understanding or idea of who the tenants were. But I think upon hearing those stories as a council, we had a bit of discussion as we recessed around what is an appropriate way forward for the council, given your personal circumstances as the tenants and the fact that you're 3 single women raising children with disabilities, but also recognising that as a council we've known for a long period of time that there are some risks with these properties. And so what we were workshopping in that recess and what we've looked to now reflect in this alternative recommendation is a process that gives you some certainty now to say, look, we're not going ahead now with the sale at this point in time. It gives us as a chance as a council to actually build a relationship with you now that we know who you are as tenants and the circumstances you're in. It gives us a chance to consult with you and to work with you and to, you know, to put timeframes in place and have discussions and consultation. And then at some point in the future, a report may come back to council again, just like the one that we've received tonight around a potential future sale process. And that was considered amongst the group to be, you know, obviously it'll go to a vote, but a compromise situation, balancing the risks that we know that they're with the property against the very personal circumstances of the three tenants. I just want to say on the record that in my view, the most difficult job of anyone in our society is a parent with children with disabilities. So I just want to take my hat off to the three of you as three strong, independent women being here together, and for the job that you are doing. It is the toughest job in our society, and from what I can just see in the brief comments, you are doing it spectacularly well. It's fair to say that, you know, on the council, I try and monitor the costs and the revenues very closely, and it's because when it comes to decisions like this, I want us to have the resources to do the compassionate thing, to do the right thing, to know that we've got the money behind us to be able to say we back the community and we back people who are in need. And so we will go through a process, but that is why I like to run a tight ship. We like to run a tight ship on this council, because when the time comes, when it matters, we need to be compassionate. And I think that with this resolution here tonight, we're trying to balance the needs and be compassionate, give you some certainty as the tenants. Let us work with you. Let us go on a process. And again, thank you so very much for coming here and the courage you displayed. And it has shown democracy in action. It has shown you can come to a council meeting, you can speak, and you can be directly heard by your representatives, and we will listen and we will act. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Would the seconder like to speak to the item?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Well, Councillor Garotti has summed up pretty amazingly, I think, what sort of went through all our heads. But yes, very much the adjournment is a very weird thing considering it's a meeting, but definitely allows us when we don't have all the information to get it and definitely get the right information, especially when there's three speakers that have shared so much openly. So firstly, congrats on speaking, because you know, public speaking is a scary thing. You've all three done well, and you did well too, Councillor Champion. But firstly, I think the most important thing which Councillor Garotti sat on was the compassion. Yeah. At the end of the day, we are a community. We are for the community, and it's important that that does come back. Secondly, is that it's our responsibility as councillors, the ratepayers' money, and that's where the importance of continuing something in regards to a process when there is a house there that needs to be moved forward, when there is liability. And thirdly, as personally for councillors, we are liable for our decisions. So without the right information, it's about making sure that we're covered. But very much around that, in the centre is the compassion. It is the community. And Councillor Garotti very much summed it up. That, you know, a single parent is a hard enough job. A single parent with children that have disabilities, I can't imagine it. So, you know, it's an important thing that we notice that, but also as our responsibility as council, continue the process, but ensure that you guys get the opportunity, get the support to be able to find a footing to go forward as well. So that's what's important going forward from here. So thank you to Councillor Garotti for the new amendment, and I look forward to supporting this.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McKern.
Thank you, Mayor. And I want to thank our speakers tonight, Rihanna, Gemma and Maiko, for your heartfelt and very personal statements. I think this evening you can feel comforted that you have been heard by this councillor group. I see you acknowledging your in agreement. And whilst this council has made, I think, a compassionate, or put forward a compassionate motion, which we will be voting on shortly, and it speaks volumes to social justice in our community. I do want to reiterate the element of risk. It is ever present, it is very real, the property is uninsurable, and it would be negligent of this council to only act on social justice grounds. I appreciate that the three of you have presented some real difficulties. They have been pronounced again by Councillors Garotti and Councillor Di Morelos. There are many people in our community also facing difficult times, and we need to be aware of the greater situation as well. And whilst we hopefully will make a decision tonight, that will mean that until we work out the best way forward, you'll stay where you are, working with our officers to find alternatives. There is a responsibility to manage that risk. And I hope that that's something that you can too come to terms with. Thank you.
Any other councillor? I'll also mention, look, I'd just like to thank you all, very powerful speakers before us this evening. And we get a lot of information in our packs to read and get on top of subjects so that we can make informed decisions. And tonight you brought something new, something we didn't know. And I'd just like to thank you all for coming in this evening and sharing that and enabling us to be informed and make the best possible decision. And I'm fully supportive of the new recommendation before us. And I think this is core business of council, to make sure everyone is looked after. I'll just write a reply for my
Yeah, Mayor, I was just going to say to the three speakers, we know that there might be some busy duties at home. So after we've voted, you can feel free welcome to head off if you wish. Thank you, Mayor.
I now will put the motion. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried unanimously. You may leave if you like. Yeah. Just note that we don't have quorum in here at the moment. We've just enabled the speakers to part, and a few councillors have stepped out to have a comment with them, but we should be back with you in a moment. To 80 Horden Street, Heidelberg, commencement of notice of intention to sell land. There are 3 speakers to this item. First up, we have Jane Crone. We'll address council in person as speaking against the recommendation. Jane, please approach the lectern. You have 2 minutes to speak.
Thank you. The Horden Street Senior Citizens Community Hall is very important in the overall fabric of our municipality. Council can and must choose tonight to not proceed with a notice of intention to sell and save a lot of time, money and community angst. Once these important halls are sold, they've gone forever. Council's swift vacation orders of only 6 months has ensured that community groups are in no position to fight for the hall's retention, as they're now busy assessing what is often proving to be unsuitable alternative spaces. I recently joined the Warringal Orchid Group. That's how I knew that they only had 6 months to get out. It was my second meeting. They were all over the top with it. Now, Heidelberg's population is expected to increase by 70.6%. This proves that this important community hall will continue to be much needed where it is and not be sold. Refurbishment, which you mentioned, if needed, is much cheaper and better than a new build, but this hall is in good condition. You've said it's ageing and doesn't offer contemporary facilities, whatever you mean by that, to support a wide range of uses. Although there's several different activities in the hall, there's more than several. I've found out there's at least 9, which is a couple more than when I was told when I asked how many groups did actually use this hall. So my question wasn't quite correct with its answer. Borden Street is the only really suitable community hall in the Heidelberg, Ivanhoe, East Ivanhoe and Eaglemont area. Council cannot consider hiring any privately owned halls, especially any church-owned ones, as many of these are being sold, as occurred in East Ivanhoe. Reasonable leases and rents can never be guaranteed, so don't look at any other halls that you don't own. Now, the August annual banner states that Council is committed to working with our community to build and strengthen relationships and inform and help make decisions. And the August 23 banner message from the Mayor states rates are used to maintain and improve facilities such as community halls. Why then are you selling it? You must not sell this hall. They've only recently sanded the hall for the many dance classes that use it. 2 minutes is nowhere near enough time to speak on this very important item. I think we need to definitely go back to 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Next up, we have Alicia Curry, who will address council in person, speaking against the recommendation. You have 2 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, councillors. I'm here to speak against the recommendation. I think the only reason you must have this up for sale is that you have an unsolicited proposal. Potentially it's for housing, we don't know. I'm just going to read you straight from your policies, which explains the rationale for not selling this hall. So this is from the housing strategy. In relation to activity centres, in a relatively short period of time, Heidelberg activity has emerged as the municipality's leading high-density housing area. At 2021, apartments accounted for 75% of these centres' occupied dwellings. Further on the document, while there has been significant new apartment supply in Heidelberg and Ivanhoe activity centres, population growth has not been commensurate. Now, when I talk about the next document I want to refer to is the Community Infrastructure Plan, which is a 10-year plan to support the community to thrive. We are improving Banyul's livability through the creation of 20-minute neighbourhoods. As part of this, we're aiming for community buildings and services to be 20-minute from shopping precincts. So on the mid-precinct in the infrastructure plan, which is Heidelberg, Rosanna and McLeod, the mid-precinct will have the largest population growth in Banyul. Most of the population growth will be in Heidelberg, which is a suitable location for a new community neighbourhood house and arts culture facility. However, talking about Heidelberg, the Heidelberg Major Activity Centre is centred around Burgundy Street and is a significant commercial area. Borden Community Hall is the only council-owned building near the station and provides a large hall that can accommodate up to 80 people. A smaller room is also available and can be used as a meeting space. So I suggest that as the only community hall in the largest and fastest growing suburb in Banyul, that it is inappropriate for this community centre to be put up for sale. I note also that the Uniting Hall, which is just up the road, which may have been an alternative, is actually set for redevelopment. So there is no alternative. And even if you came up with an alternative, that should be on the ground before this is put up for sale. So I ask you kindly to remove this from sale. It should not be up at this stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Alicia. Next up, we have Brian Grace from Good Governance Banyul, who will address council in person, speaking against the recommendation. You have 2 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor. My name is Brian Grace. I'm Vice President of Good Governance Banyul. On many things that I speak about on behalf of our members, this strikes me and our group as probably one of the stupidest decisions council has ever seen. This isn't a vacant block of land. It's not an open park. It's a building that houses the community to come together. 2 dance groups, an orchid group, a flower group. There are 9 groups that use this hall. I can't understand why you would even think of kicking kids out of a hall into the street. We talk about how important it is to keep our communities together, and you're pulling down their houses. You're pulling down their... We spoke about houses being pulled down just before, and we've seen what happened. But ladies and gentlemen, and even the directors, this is a community hall that has a long history of use in our community. Keep it going. You know, there'll be plenty of time in 20 or 30 years to sell it. But keep these groups together. In fact, the 2 dance groups have been offered the Belfield Hub. Well, the Belfield Hub doesn't have a dance floor. So you're kicking the dance groups out and sending them to a hall that doesn't have a dance group. It doesn't have a dance floor. I don't understand this decision. The Hordern Street, it's an elderly citizens group that was owned by the Heidelberg Council, now owned by the Banyule Council. And just delay this, delay it, because, you know, and I know that it may have come from a recommendation of the economic group for the Banyule City Council. Well, go back to them and say the community still uses it and the community still wants it to be used. And then when you find alternative arrangements, then you can move the groups on. But to throw kids out into the street and then not give them an alternative is a disgrace. You were not elected to do this. You are not, and just remember, in just over 12 months, you're up for election. Will any of you put that you threw kids out into the street on your election brochures? Now I'm available for questions. No questions?
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
We have a question from Councillor Garotti.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, and not directed to our speaker, to the appropriate officer. Can we just have an update on how the discussions have been progressing with users of that facility? Through you, Mayor.
Could the relevant officer please provide some information on that?
I will have to take some of that on notice, but I know that a number of them have visited Belfield to see if that's an alternative site, and I'm trying to get some information on where else they've been offered. But I can take that
And the CEO has some further information.
Thanks. Through you, Mayor. We've been working closely with a number of the users. Some have been looking at the Old Shire office and the Bundoora Community Hall and the Watsonia Community Hall. We've taken V Studio through to our Nets Stadium and showed them the mezzanine area and the spaces there, and that's looking quite favourable to them because it's on a train line and has shops associated, so it's quite like the facility in their mind to that at Hordern Street, but we're continuing to work through. What we're finding is that some of our existing halls where people are looking at relocation, there might be some storage needs that would be required to accommodate their needs, but I think about 80% we've found relocation for at this point.
A further question from Councillor McKern.
Thanks, Mayor. Through you, I'd like to ask a question of the Director of City Development. I think the speakers this evening raised some salient points, particularly given Heidelberg is the fastest growing suburb in Banyule. Going into the future with increased population in Heidelberg, will this building be fit for purpose for community groups into the future?
Thank you, Councillor McKernan, through you, Mayor. This building's not been identified as being exactly what we're looking for in terms of community infrastructure provision in the community infrastructure plan. It notes it as being a hall that is currently available within the area, but that community meeting spaces and other multi-purpose spaces would be preferred in terms of servicing the future community. It also identifies that the need for these spaces is perhaps more compatible with some lower scale development that you might find on some of the properties outside of the central core of the activity centre, where you'll get the higher scale development. So there's an opportunity here for a significantly higher form of development than the current hall has, and looking at a multi-purpose space being in a more lower scale building directly adjacent to the activity centre.
Further question from McKern?
Yep.
Councillor McKern?
Given what you've just said, Director, do you see scope for a community hall in the Heidelberg area into the future, perhaps to replace the existing one?
The current community infrastructure plan doesn't identify the need for a hall space, but for different community spaces.
Thank you. Any other questions? I've got a couple of questions based on some of the comments made earlier for the relevant officer. Has there been an unsolicited proposal that has brought on this sale?
Councillors, we haven't started any form of process or received any proposals. This property's always been identified as not being fit for purpose for our needs, and identified as obviously being a very valuable parcel of land with a much larger development potential than it currently has as a lower scale hall. And that's the primary reason why it's been identified as a strategic property that could be disposed of.
Thank you. I'll now then put the motion forward. Oh, no further question? Okay, we have a mover of the motion, Councillor Garotti. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Neely. Would the mover like to speak to the item? But before you speak, I will just like to foreshadow that I will be recommending an alternative recommendation not to sell this if this does not pass.
Thank you, Mel. I'm assuming if this recommendation doesn't pass, then there is no need for an alternative. But thank you for flagging that. Yeah, look, everything that we do as a council has trade-offs, and I certainly appreciate the comments raised by the three speakers, notwithstanding the third speaker wearing a cap from a football team who I have significant issues with. But once I put that aside, I was able to listen to the feedback and engage in it. So, look, it is a community asset in that area, no doubt about it. On the other hand, as our Director of Community City Development pointed out quite saliently, in terms of that area and in terms of utilisation of that space, are we as a council, is the community getting the maximum value? And in generating that value, how do we then redistribute that within the council? And, as I pointed out earlier tonight, we've signed off on $2.2 million worth of purchases. We've purchased a community asset in Montmorency. We've purchased a community asset at Watsonia Station. And I'm happy to go to the election, I can assure you, and tell my community that I've bought an asset in Watsonia. I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud that we have the financial capacity in the earlier item to be able to look 3 single women in the eyes with children that have disabilities and say, we're not going to put you through a horrendous process of uncertainty around a sale until we've figured something out with you, in partnership with you. And we can do that because our balance sheet enables us to do that. And our balance sheet is in that position because we make, those trade-offs, those difficult decisions. And this has been identified as one of those opportunities. In an ideal world, would I like not to be proposing to move forward with this process? Of course, and for the very valid reasons that have been raised by our speakers. But it's a trade-off, and we need to be able to balance the revenue that we gain from rates, from retail and commercial, and from land sales to fund the whole range of things that we do. And it's within that context that I feel comfortable that this is the right trade-off to potentially make, but noting that this is a process that we're going to go through, and we're not signing off on the sale tonight. All that we're saying is that we're open to a process to hear the community out further on this. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Would the second like to speak? Any other councillors? Councillor McKern.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you to the three speakers too. I think you've done your homework, and that's noted. I'd like to say, Mayor, that I've certainly shifted my position since the last time Hordern Street Community Hall came to council with regards to potential sale. I think very important points have been raised about the number of community groups that use this hall, and I'm also concerned that Heidelberg, as has been noted by a number of our speakers, is indeed the fastest growing suburb in Banyule, and we're looking at over 6,000 people moving into this area. It's important that we as a council provide sufficient community infrastructure for the residents of Heidelberg. Let's face it, they're going to be putting up with the highest density residential accommodation in all of Banyule, given the Heidelberg structure plan. So I think the least we can do is make sure that as a council, we provide appropriate and sufficient amount of community space, both open space and space for community groups to get together and do what community groups do, commune. So I'm also interested in council staff comment that it's confident of relocating our user groups. Just hearing what the CEO has had to say about where user groups have been relocated, they've been dispersed right through the municipality. I'd like to know where some of these people are based. I would have thought Heidelberg is a lot more central for most of them, and that's why they located there in the first place. I believe that another more appropriate building to Heidelberg's growing needs should be secured before we sell the existing hall. And I think that's the position that community would agree would be more appropriate. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillors wish to speak? Councillor De Malaros.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. This is actually a real interesting one. I'm all for the recommendation of going to notice of intention to sell land to definitely get the feedback from all the community and see where it goes. But it definitely has brought up some discussion points that as councillors, I believe we were under the impression that most of the community groups would be found in your home. And by the sounds of it from the speakers tonight, there are some of the groups have had some issues in movement. So I would like to see that come back to councillors to see what's going on, because I know that was something that came up when this originally came up in May. Regarding the land, we've seen the report multiple times. This is an older facility. The future strategic plan says that this area does need multi-purpose rooms. Now council's saying that in this situation, it looks better to sell and look for something else. What will come out of that, we'll see with this going out to the community for more feedback. So more than happy to see this go out and get more community feedback, but also some interesting points raised, and wait to hear back from officers regarding them. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillors? No? All right. Well, I'll speak to the item. Now, this is in my ward, and this is an item that I'm deeply concerned about the sale of, and I will not be able to support the recommendation coming to us this evening. But I also like to ensure that the appropriate information is being considered, whether it's for or against my position. And I'd just like to include some information about the Uniting Hall up the hill that was already redeveloped and will not be for sale because they've just redeveloped it, and that's as much as it is intended for at this point in time. Happy to share that information. Now, we as a council need to act strategically, and I acknowledge that this may not be the most strategic delivery the most strategic utilisation of this asset. But at the same time, Heidelberg is in great need for community facilities, being the greatest growth area. The community infrastructure plan also notes it. Now, we work in a very strategic way, and we've identified opportunities in Montmorency and Watsonia to deliver on community infrastructure that's really needed. We have been looking in Heidelberg, and we've made attempts to buy strategic properties in Heidelberg to deliver for Heidelberg. We haven't been able to identify or find the right place yet. So I think it's important that those in the community know about that. But as a principle, I cannot support the sale of this, despite the users finding homes that I have been given information from, and when speaking to them, they were comfortable with alternative locations. But we might also have others that disagree with that. But as a principle, I don't believe we should be selling this land or even going out with an intention to sell this land until we have a plan and a budget allocation for Heidelberg to deliver the important municipal functions and spaces that is needed for Heidelberg. So I will not be able to support this. I will now put the motion. All those in favour? It's 4. And those against? I declare the motion carried. We now move on to item 7.1, Public Toilet Plan Review. There are 2 speakers on this item. Roger Fife will address council in person and is speaking for the recommendation. Roger, please approach the lectern. You have 2 minutes. Looks like you've got football paraphernalia on as well with you this evening.
Yes. Do you know your target clients well enough? You've said in the report 85% of respondents are greater than 35 years of age, 64% are women. How many are older than 50? And that leads on to community engagement, shaping Banyule online, Banyule social media online, community advisory in-house committees. The only interviews of users not specified clearly how that was broken up. My consistent position over the years is we need to promote these policies to those who do not have computers or use social media or are from culturally and linguistic communities. We have council's points of contact, libraries, service centres. These are missed opportunities. This is a complex officer report and the attachments total 95 pages. There is repetition and the figures border on the unreadable. We need to make community input easier. Actions. 1. Notices prominently displayed at service centres and libraries. 2. At minimum, a list of toilets and locations, A3 plans with roads marked. That's unreadable. And 3, a simple paper feedback form and a collection box at libraries and service centres. Available for questions.
Thank you, Roger. We have a question. Councillor McKern.
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Fife, for your statement and for your suggestions as well. I might just put a question through to, it'll be, I think, the Director of Assets and City Services who's responsible for this review. Given what Mr. Fife has spoken to about the need to promote this policy for more robust community feedback, to those who don't have computers, and I think that's quite legitimate. How would you suggest we do that?
Thanks for your question, Councillor McKernan, through you, Mayor. I guess the point was that there was quite a lot of intercept surveys when we were developing the strategy. I think Mr Fife makes has given us some good feedback in relation to the readability of the strategy, and I think that's been recognised. And when we briefed the councillors, there was also some feedback in relation to that. We're taking that on board, and we are going to present the key elements of the strategy in a more digestible way on Shaping Banyule. But I think the suggestion to provide some further promotion through our customer service centres and our libraries is a good one, and I'm happy to look into that and take that on board. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director. Mayor, if I could ask a question, should we formalise that in terms of a motion to extend some of the consultation to include simple paper feedback at our service centres and libraries, as has been suggested by the Speaker?
I think if you put that forward for amendment, we can consider that.
I'd like to foreshadow that then. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. We have, if there's no further questions at this point, we have one further speaker. Tonight is Louise Moller, has provided a written statement and is against the recommendation. Natasha Swan, Director of City Developments, will read out the written statement.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm reading out this written statement on behalf of Louise Muller. I'm concerned about Council's proposal of public toilets within Rosanna Parkland. I believe that such a structure would be detrimental to the nature of the park, a safety risk and a health concern. Friends of Salt Creek have previously asked for a drinking tap at the central playground. We've always been told that the cost of such a thing was too expensive. We're now looking at the proposal where a toilet block is actually being considered. I'm assuming there will be toilets in the supermarket and library at the Rosanna end of the park. Why are the toilets at the McLeod Footy Oval not maintained? Do we really need a block of toilets in the middle of one of the few nature reserves in this area?
Thank you. Now, councillors, there is an office report before you as set out in the agenda papers. I'm calling for a motion. Do we have a mover? Councillor McKern, and with an amendment?
Yes, I've been just trying to whip one up here, Mayor. I would like to foreshadow that community feedback on the public toilet plan review be extended to include paper feedback and public notices displayed at service centres and libraries in Banyule.
Councillor, could that be incorporated into the first point? That where it says that on Shaping Banyule, you could then include those elements with paper-based options at the service centres and the libraries?
We could do that, Councillor Grotti, through you, Mayor, but I'm just thinking I wouldn't mind just separating the computer-orientated feedback from paper-orientated. So if we could do that as a separate point, just to make it clear.
Are you comfortable with what's on the screen now?
That would be terrific. So what we have then is point 2, notes that community consultation is to include extended consultation to include paper feedback and public notices display at service centres and libraries in Banyule. Thank you. And would it be okay, Mayor, if we check in with the Speaker as to whether that actually responds to his query?
I don't think that's appropriate. I think we've responded to it appropriately. I think you've summed up the important points that he was making.
Thank you.
I now move, do we have a seconder? Councillor Grotti, would the mover like to speak to the item?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm glad that the public toilet review has generated community interest, because toilets are a basic necessity and they're an essential infrastructure for our public to use and enjoy public spaces, particularly those in shopping strips and parks. But toilets are often taken for granted by those who have regular access and for those who can afford to pay. for toilet access in the private realm, usually in places such as cafes and restaurants. So the Public Toilet Plan Review is an important plan then that sets out renewal, replacement and upgrades to existing public toilets and also for the installation of new public toilets. So those who have read the report will know that the gap analysis did identify some priority locations for six new locations. Of course, one of the speakers tonight did speak to the Rosanna Parklands location. So I welcome this report and I also welcome public feedback to it. I know as a councillor, I do receive emails and phone calls about, one, the state of our public toilets, but also the gaps in public toilets. So those residents in Chelsworth will be pleased to know that the Waterdale Road Public Loo is listed for upgrade. I've had a few emails about the state of that one. And the upgrade should include a new hand dryer, soap dispenser, clothing hooks, mirror and automatic sensor. And I believe that there's going to be some advocacy for opening of the Eaglemont station toilets and that is being moved to high priority, Mr Mayor, which you might speak to. So if residents are interested in contributing their comment to the draft plans, as has been noted, the exhibition and public feedback period opens on the 27th of September on Shaping Banyule. And we'll also have the opportunity for those without computers to make their contributions. So we councillors want to know your thoughts on this important element of our public infrastructure. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, councillor. Would the seconder like to speak to the item?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, and yeah, just to acknowledge and thank our speakers. So, with regard to the written one, I think a good feedback raised. So I just encourage officers to pick that submission up into the process. But certainly some good early feedback raised around the perceived need for a toilet in that area. And as always, thank you to Mr. Roger Fife and for the insight that he brings to this chamber when he speaks, because I agree wholeheartedly about the fact that we need to facilitate different options for people to engage with the council, including paper-based and hard copy. Very critical. Not everyone's online and people need that opportunity, and people need that opportunity just when they're coming through a customer service centre or a library to see something, write something down or fill out a survey. So I think it's a great suggestion and I think it'll enhance the input into this. And it's reminded me as well, Mayor, that I'd asked our CEO and Director of Corporate Services for some feedback on the rates hardship and hard copy processes. And I would certainly like to be updated on that, because I do think that for everything that we do online as a council, at least where we're at now with our community, we need to be offering paper-based hard copy for our community members. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, councillor. Any other councillors? Councillor Neely.
Thank you, Mayor. It's important that council is across its assets and facilities, and this report is about releasing this plan for comment. So, as we know, as Councillor McKern mentioned, our toilets are a necessity for the community who plan their outdoor activities, running, walking, going to the park, sports clubs use them, elderly, practically all of our community groups. So we want to increase the walkability of the municipality, and we need to plan for gaps and upgrades. So this is important in this report. To note that the replacement of toilets, new installations and operating costs really do require a financial plan. It is a huge cost, but an important cost. We know also that public toilets are not always treated respectfully. They're sometimes, unsavoury places that people don't feel safe going to, and it's a priority that these are made safe for all to use, all ages, and that we take this plan forward to meet future needs. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, councillor. Any other councillors? No, I will just like to note, I think a lot's been covered, but both speakers have contributed on this item. Thank you. Particularly Louise, who isn't here, she shared some information about the importance of looking at a broader picture when we're looking at toilets. And it's already drawn our attention to the opportunities potentially at the McLeod Football Pavilion, being able to provide that toilet close to the park and potentially save council significant costs if it was to be built standalone in a park. So I'm very thankful for both contributions on that. I think this is an important item. I didn't know how important public toilets were until I came to council. A lot of user groups, older people, and also mothers and children. It's really important that we have these throughout Banyule. I think it's a really important strategy we get right. And one of the items on there was to do advocacy work, to look at opportunities for partnerships or to toilets that are in existence to be opened up. And Friends of Eaglemont Village have been an incredibly large advocate for the realisation or the sensible opening and usage of a toilet that is there and is closed. It's just not available to the community that could be available. So I think it's really important that council looks at any opportunity to do partnerships, make sure that the running costs and cost to the community isn't great, but we have the necessary assets to be able to support our community in this essential service. And that's it for me on that. I will now then put the motion. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. We're now moving on to item 8.1, Inclusive Local Jobs Strategy, Action Plan, Year 3 update. There are no speakers to this item. Councillors, there's an officer report before you as set out in the agenda papers. I'm now calling for a motion. Do I have a mover? Councillor Grotti, seconded by Councillor Neely. Would the mover like to speak to the item?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Very pleased to move this update on the strategy and action plan. Great work being done, I think, as we covered recently on this in the chamber. And also just to note that on Thursday, I believe yourself and I will be opening the next round of the Inclusive Jobs Program at Watermark Greensborough. And that will be open for people to apply to. And so I'd just be saying to those in the gallery, anyone listening from home, if you know someone in the community that's looking for that opportunity, for looking for that hand up, we will be opening up the next round and potentially come and check out the information session on Thursday night, Greensborough Watermark. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Would the second like to speak?
Yes, thanks, Mayor. Council's made progress towards the target of the 1,000 local jobs for people facing barriers to employment by 2025. So one of the highlights for me is the creation of these jobs for our local people and all of the work behind the scenes to engage with different community groups. I'd like to mention the First Nations Job Fair. I attended that last year with Councillor Champion, and that was a collaboration between councils, Banyule, Whittlesea and Darebin. An excellent initiative. First Nations people were supported with job opportunities, primarily Aboriginal-owned businesses were there, and there was assistance through application and registrations, and it's a lot of work that people don't know about that I think needs to be highlighted. Just for the football fans in the room, we met Nikki Winmar, okay, just thought I'd share that one. Not everyone knew who that was, but I won't say who. Anyway, yeah, great day. But it's these meaningful programs that create these opportunities, and I thank the officers for all their work on that collaboration, which made it such a wide, reaching people far and wide, but as well as Banyule. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillors? I'd just like to thank Jane Nixon, the author of the report, and the rest of the team involved in this. And just note that Councillor Garotti and myself are excited to open up the new information session coming up this Thursday evening with new applicants for Year 3. With that, I will now put the motion. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. We now move on to item 8.2, Social Enterprise Strategy, Action Plan Year 3 update. There are no speakers to this item. Councillors, there's an officer report before you as set out on the agenda papers. I'm calling for a motion. Do I have a mover? Councillor Garotti, seconded by Councillor Champion. Would the mover like to speak to the item?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Look, again, very good work being undertaken. And I probably just wanted to call out the Not Yet Social Brew at what's only a train station, getting that up and running. So there was a temporary gap there in having a social enterprise provider, but to get someone there in that prime opportunity, great work to officers. And it just complements now. We've got one at Belfield, Change Co, Araloo Enchanters Cafe, and Open House Whispers Cafe at Ivanhoe. So if you sort of have a look around now, we've got 4 or 5 bustling social enterprise cafes in Banyule, and that's really just the tip of the iceberg in terms of social enterprise activity in Banyule. Very pleasing to see. It is actually part of our strategic plan where we've positioned ourselves to be the leading council for social enterprise in Victoria, and really pleased to see that we've taken the lead in the Social Enterprise Network of Victoria, and that we're now actually helping other councils, supporting them, mentoring them, developing that capability within the sector, just like we've done with Inclusive Jobs. So well done, and in particular thanks to our CEO, because I know that she really drives that within the organisation, and it's truly important work. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. And the seconder? Okay, any other councillors? I'd just like to also acknowledge the important social enterprises throughout Banyule. We've got 4 of them. I think all of them are available through the social or through the community bus. So if you haven't had a coffee or something to eat at each one of those social enterprises, I encourage you to go and visit them. They're very good places in Banyule to visit. Now, I will put the motion. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. We're now moving on to item 9.1, notice of motions, abandonment of shopping trolleys. There is one speaker to this item, Mr. Roger Fife, is speaking for the recommendation. Please approach the lectern, you have 2 minutes.
Focusing on resolution item 2E, powers under Council's Local Law Number 1, 2015. I'm proposing that consideration should be given to on-the-spot fines for individuals who take trolleys out of shopping centre car parks where there are trolley return bays. This would acknowledge the issue is the result of individuals who abandon trolleys after they've taken them elsewhere for their convenience. Possibly under the local law, it could be a category of littering. I'd also note that Coles and Kmart have a trolley collection free call number on their trolleys and respond promptly when contacted. The replacement cost of each trolley is about $250. Fines to release impounded trolleys are substantial. And I'd also, some of you have involvement as traders, the trolley theft by other businesses is also an issue. Their damage or impoundment and loss is not a cost of doing business for supermarkets or major stores. It is theft. Firms are trialling technology that could lock the wheels of trolleys once they leave a store precinct. I've just lost it. So the conclusion is it's not just the supermarket's problem, it is the community's problem. And so don't punish the supermarkets. Do look at the broader community and other businesses that are stealing trolleys and using them for their own purposes.
Thank you.
Finished?
Do we have any questions? No? All right. Councillors, there's an officer report before you is set out on the agenda papers. I'm calling for a mover. Councillor De Morelos moved, seconded by Councillor McKern. Would the mover like to speak to the item?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Roger. Some very interesting points brought up, and definitely I would like to see those come back in the report. But pretty self-explanatory. Abandoned shopping trolleys seems to be becoming a bigger problem, especially in my ward, along Liberty Parade. It seems to be quite prevalent, and I know it continues to be an issue for our director and the cost of collecting them sometimes, but there is a lot happening in the back end. We can see through this report, it's also shown that the council officers are being active regarding it, and, you know, have a contractor to try and help reduce it. But very much in my ward, it seems to be a consistent problem. So looking forward to this coming back with some more information. Thank you.
Thank you. And the seconder?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to Councillor De Morelos for raising this notice of motion. I think it's a very appropriate one, so well done, Councillor De Morelos. It's also quite an issue in my ward, so I can assure you it's not just an issue in Olympia. I do get emails and phone calls from constantly frustrated residents who live just beyond about 1 kilometre from Coles and Woolworths shopping centres in particular, because that seems to be almost a boundary beyond which the supermarkets won't collect, and then it's left to our officers to try and resolve. So that sort of distance, but also our creeks and waterways seem to be a popular dumping spot, which creates, as was mentioned, litter, but also a terrific visual blight and annoyance on our environment. Contrary to what our speaker said, I actually think we need to be putting a lot more pressure on our supermarkets. I know that there is new technology out these days, trolley locking technology, which some supermarkets have been testing, and this involves sensors in the wheels of trolleys so that the trolleys will lock if they're moved a certain distance away from their source point, the supermarket in question. To me, that makes a lot of sense. Why be issuing fines, engaging municipal laws, when I think this is actually a private enterprise issue and they should be investing in the technology with encouragement from council. I look forward to a report coming back. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillors? No, I'd just like to thank Councillor De Morelos for bringing this forward. It's been a long-going issue, shopping trolleys, and I know particularly in Olympia ward, a long history there. Just this week, I've seen them in Greensboro and Heidelberg, backed up at least 10 of them in Cartmel Street. So there is a serious issue across Banyule, and I know there are a number of complaints that come in about this. So thank you for bringing this one forward. I'll now then put the motion. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. We now move on to notice motion 9.2, community infrastructure opportunities at public schools. There are no speakers to this item. Councillors, there's an officer report before you set out in agenda papers, and I'm calling for a motion. Councillor Garotti moved, seconded Councillor Neely.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, very pleased to be putting this forward to council. We've got a track record of successfully partnering with the state at some of our public schools, and it's touched on in the recommendation there. Greensborough Secondary, really good outcome, and also at McLeod College, the Nets Stadium. We think that there might be other opportunities across some of our other public schools. We know that for state, the budgetary situation is tightening up. It is for council as well. But sometimes with these scenarios, if we're able to contribute to the capital and get an outcome that's really good for the community and a facility that can be used by public school students, and the school can then cover the operating costs, we're setting up a real win-win here. So, yeah, had a bit of a conversation or two with the officers and looked to put this forward, hopeful for support from the group, and then getting a report back. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Seconder?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm very passionate about community infrastructure planning, and this notice of motion is about increasing public partnerships and opportunities. And as we know, communities are ever changing, and we need to maximise the space that we have as a council. And sharing an asset with a school, as a school teacher, it makes a lot of sense. It also makes the land more sustainable, more productive, and benefits not only for the school but for the residents of Banyule. The other opportunities that I thought about that could help attract more funding for council, develop new activities, or money that we would normally reinvest in a particular facility could be reinvested elsewhere. A partnership like this could attract more volunteers, or reanimate a space that needs a little bit of invigoration. So I support Councillor Grotti's notice of motion as it gives an opportunity for more public access to infrastructure. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Any other councillors? Councillor McKern.
Thank you, Mayor. And once again, I'd like to thank the councillor who has put up this notice of motion. I suppose my interest here is public infrastructure in relation to public open space. We know that there will be increasing pressures regarding population density in Banyule, and our open space plan for Banyule has identified that every resident should be able to reach public open space within 400 metres of their homes, preferably without crossing a major road. This could actually help us in achieving this aim should we partner with public schools in relation to using their public open space areas such as ovals, because currently there are quite a number of places in Banyule where we do not have the sort of access that the objectives of our public open space plan would have us meet. So this could actually serve this council quite well if such a partnership for open space inclusion could be worked out between the various partners. So thank you very much, Councillor Grotti, for putting this notice of motion forward. I'll certainly be supporting it this evening.
I'll also reiterate that I think it's an important discussion that we need to have to maximise the utilisation of public assets, and I think this goes a really good step forward in unlocking opportunities for Banyule. I'll now put the motion. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. We're now moving on to item 10, general business. We have, first up, we have the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Alida McKern, and followed up by Councillor Alison Champion. Alida, would you like to start?
Thank you very much, Mayor. There's always things going on in Banyule, and I love being able to report on various things during general business. I'd like to report that a number of us councillors recently attended the opening night and awards ceremony for Works on Paper. This is a really special event that our arts and culture team runs biannually. And the theme for this year was recognising that reconciliation requires all of us to come together and do our part to build a future for all Australians. The winner of the $10,000 first prize for their work, Bayad Hera, was Auntie Rochelle Payton and Katie Howard. It was a terrific evening had by the many people who enjoyed the high standard of work in a most convivial atmosphere. In attendance were the Mayor, Councillor Castaldo, Councillor Neely and Councillor Champion as well. I'd encourage you to have a look at this exhibition because the standard of work is excellent. It's on till the 26th of November and applications came from all over the country for this particular exhibition. We talked about the urban food strategy this evening and I thought it timely to talk about BANSIC. Banyul's Support and Information Centre Food Hub in particular. I was delighted to go and help at the Food Hub this week with Kate's volunteers, packing food relief parcels for Banyul residents struggling with food security. And for those people who'd like to volunteer or find out more about this vital local service, I'd encourage you to contact the BANSIC Food Hub. You can Google it, or for those who don't have a computer, the phone number is 9459 5959. It might even be available in telephone book. But you'd be interested to know that BANSIC, even though it's located in Olympia on Oriel Road, doesn't just assist people with the 3081 postcode. It services 3079, which is Ivanhoe, 3084 and 3085. So you'd be surprised. It is tough for a lot of people out there in our community at the moment. And whilst, as I mentioned, it's located at 155 Oriel Road, Heidelberg West, it services quite a large proportion of the Banyul area. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. And your second item?
Nope, covered them both.
Oh, okay. All right, excellent. We'll move on to Councillor Champion.
Thanks, Mayor. On Friday the 15th of September, the long-anticipated opening of Montmorency's latest revitalised meeting place was officially opened, the Weir Street Pocket Park. For this perfect outcome of collaboration between State Government and Banyul Council, the community and council officers to create an open space for all to walk through, sit in, play on, perform under, gather together, park near, watch, meet, greet, eat, drink and use safe modern public toilets. The bright, sunny and warm morning was enjoyed by Member for Eltham MP, Vicky Ward, SRC students and Principal Phillip from St Francis Xavier Primary School, Banyul CEO Alison Beckwith, Banyul Director of City Development Natasha Swan, Mayor Peter Castaldo, Project Manager Nick Kai, Parks and Gardens Officer Michael, as well as representatives from State Government and Banyul Council, parents, grandparents and community. So thank you very much to everybody who's contributed to this project, which includes our passionate residents, past and current council officers, State Government staff and contractors to ensure this project remained on budget, and the familiar open space which serves as the heart of this popular shopping strip. My special thanks go to Nick Mackay for taking over the role of managing this project after its inception towards the start of the year and communicating via many emails and phone calls from our community, from the Montmorency traders and me, to ensure that we understand the intricacies of this much-loved park. And to Michael and Shane from our Parks and Gardens team, who not only planted out our newest public gardens, but also they're also available unofficially to provide advice to the locals about their own plants and gardens. So they will continue to care for these garden beds into the future. They'll be there regularly and they're happy to share their knowledge. So just keep an eye out for them when you're in the area. They're happy to share, help you understand a little bit more about the plants and how to care for them. We did learn about how to care for kangaroo paw that day. So we're looking forward to seeing this pocket park used by many residents of all ages, community groups, school students and visitors for many years to come. Thank you. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, councillor. Any other councillors? We do have a lot of important events in Banyule. I've got 5, but I'll get through them very quickly. Since the last meeting, it has been 4 weeks. First is the Ivanhoe Reading Circle on the 5th of September, an event to talk about the first astronomers, our First Nations people. And I thought that was the most engaging public speaker I've ever seen, just about. It was a tremendous event. Ivanhoe Reading Circle, definitely a group you should consider joining if you haven't. Secondly is Banyule Community Fund, the launch on the 7th of September. It was another very well attended event, an important piece of council's work to encourage people to support local organisations and potentially bequests or donations to our local organisations. Thirdly is the Youth Festival on the 10th of September. Another large event, a couple thousand people must have attended that one, the peak event for our youth in Banyule. And on the 20th of September, Wurundjeri Cultural Walk by Uncle David and Uncle Bill walked us through Banyule, the Banyule Swamp, the Banyule Billabong, the swamp, and talked to us about the importance of all the different plants and ecology in the system, and it was a tremendous opportunity. 4 hours that walk went for. And finally, the citizenship ceremony on the 20th of September. I must say, one of the most important and most beautiful events as a mayor to be able to attend, where we had over 150 new people calling Australia home. So that was another very special event. So there is a lot going on in Banyule for all those watching. We now move on to the next agenda item, public questions. We have received 4 public questions. I will now request Council Managers of Governance and Integrity, Kristen Fort, to read out the questions and Directors to read out Council's responses. The public questions will be included in the minutes of this meeting. The minutes will be available on the website later this week. Over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. The first question we received was from Jai Sanford from Heidelberg Heights. The question has been allowed in accordance with the governance rules and our public participation guidelines. The question reads, will Council fly the trans flag to mark Trans Day of Remembrance on the 20th of November 2023? And I'll hand over to Jo Wilson, Acting Director, Community Wellbeing, to answer the question.
Thank you. In 2022, the transgender flag was flown to mark the official Transgender Day of Remembrance, as per the recommendations made from the LGBTIQA+ committee to Council. This practice will continue this year until the committee makes a different recommendation to Council.
The second question was received from Mr. Roger Fife. The question was allowed in accordance with the governance rules and again our public question time guidelines. The question asks, properties on the east side of Waterdale Road, Ivanhoe, in precinct 61, can use Bryant Reserve to access parking within that precinct. Can that be done safely at night? If not, what will it cost to become compliant? And I'll hand over to Natasha Swan, Director of City Development, to answer the question.
Thank you. A lighting assessment of Bryant Reserve and the car parking area was undertaken by one of Council's traffic engineers in June 2023. The inspection determined that the lighting met the required standard. So from an infrastructure perspective, it is considered safe. However, safety is an individual consideration, with the infrastructure being only one element.
The third question was received from Alicia Curry from Rosanna. The question was allowed in accordance with the governance rules again and the public question time guidelines. The question reads, would Council provide the figures on social housing, i.e. public and community housing in Banyule, to include the existing dwellings and number of bedrooms this provides, and also provide the estimated number of dwellings and respective bedrooms which have been planned by the state government, some for many years, yet to be provided, such as the Ivanhoe Water Tank site, Belbardia Estate, Tarakan Estate, Boona site and other known sites in Heidelberg areas. And I'll hand over to Natasha Swan again, Director of City Development, to answer that question.
Thank you. Council does not provide or coordinate social housing, and as such, we do not usually have access to existing housing numbers, which are held by the state government. Homes Victoria has, however, recently shared some of their figures with us. There are 2,296 social housing dwellings in Banyule. These dwellings can be broken down by number of bedrooms. 1 bed 663 dwellings, 2 bed 840 dwellings, 3 bed 593 dwellings, and 4 bed 200 dwellings. We have limited information so far on specific sites for planned housing as follows. Tarracan Estate, 130 dwellings with a combination of 1, 2 and 3 bed dwellings. 40 of these dwellings is for affordable housing based on income rather than social housing. Launch Housing, Belfield, 58 units with a mix of 1, 2 and 3 bed dwellings. And Unison, Bell Street, 42 dwellings for a mix of social and affordable housing.
The fourth and final question was received from Jane Crone from Eaglemont. The question is allowed in accordance with the governance rules and again our public question time guidelines. The question asks, I'm seeking information on the once vibrant, family-orientated, friendly, successful Heidelberg Swimming Club. That would include what happened to it, where did it go, what happened to its partially parent-funded club room, and where is its historical memorabilia now stored that includes its honour boards and perpetual swimming championship trophies? And I'll hand over to Jo Wilson, Acting Director of Community Wellbeing, to respond to that question.
Thank you. Undertaking some research, Council's been able to source information about the Heidelberg Flyers Swim Club that utilise the Heidelberg Primary School pool in Cape Street and or the Ivanhoe Girls Grammar. The Heidelberg Historical Society outlines on its website some information of some history of swimming clubs in Banyule, and that can be located at their website, which is heidelberghistoricalsociety.com.au. It refers to the Heidelberg Swimming Club that was established in 1912. It seems to be linked with the Alphington Swimming Club rooms, which were located along the Yarra River. This was used for competitions for local swim clubs, including Heidelberg. A number of sheds and beaches at the Yarra swimming holes were swept away by repeated flooding, especially in 1934. By the 1950s and 60s, the river was increasingly polluted and municipal swimming pools were being established and replaced river swimming. Unfortunately, it's not known what may have happened to the historical memorabilia, but the Historical Society may have more information on this.
Thank you to those reading it out and those that did the submissions. Now, in accordance with Section 66(2)(a) of the Local Government Act 2020, the meeting will now be closed to members of the public for the consideration of 3 confidential matters. Can I please have a councillor move and second for the council to close the meeting to members of the public prior to considering confidential items 11.1, management of operation of Watermark, finalisation 2023-24 budget and request for tender timelines, 11.2, Belfield uplift payment for Crown condition removal on Wedge land, and 11.3, outcomes for the CEO Employment Matters Committee meeting 14th of August 2023. Moved Councillor Neely, seconded by Councillor Champion. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. The next ordinary meeting of council will be held on Monday the 9th of October 2023. I now close the meeting to the public at 9:54 p.m. Thank you everyone for your attendance and those online. Thank you.